git cloned the whole project Engine262. I've added some like extra files so that we can debug it, but for most purposes this is basically just a clone of what you are seeing here. Okay, so I've cloned this repo, and to use this piece of code, right, to like execute some JavaScript with this engine, you have to sort of use this kind of a setup code. Okay, so let me go through this at a very overall level. Okay, so you set up some of the, they call it like as agent and realm, but you can understand this to be, like things which your engine can like change how to do. So it's stuff like, if someone writes something like debugger, right, they just write a statement called debugger. What do you want to do then? So for example, Chrome might want to show something in its DevTools, but yours implementation might want to do something else, right? It might just, do a console log or something like that. So you basically set up some agent, set up some rhythm. This is basically again setup code. You can effectively say that, things like in your engine, how do files get resolved? So for example, if I do import a.js or import a, where to find that file? You can, change that in your engine. And then there is only one thing that we are adding. So if you talk about like pure JavaScript, right, there is no console.log in pure JavaScript. There is like, in all kind of implementations you might not have a console, so there is no direct console.log, which is why only thing they are doing is they're adding a, global variable, global function called print, which uses like our Node.js's console.log to print the value. Okay, so again, we are not going into the details, but effectively what we need to do is, instead of doing console.log of something, we just have to do print of something. So that will work. And finally, what you have to do is use this .evaluate script and put whatever JavaScript you want to run in this engine within it. Okay, so if I go to my piece of code, so again, I basically copy pasted the same thing, added that print function, and then I can try to, run some piece of code. Okay, so let's start with this and see how it works. So first thing is, we need to run this, right? So one way of running it is if you go to terminal in VS Code, right? We want to basically like run Node.js, but we want to make sure that, VS Code attaches as a debugger. So one option that you have is, if you go to the terminal in VS Code, you can do create like JavaScript debug terminal. So basically what this does is it automatically attaches or adds those, debugger like CLI flags that you have to normally pass. And now if I just run node, I think my file is called, okay, and if I do this, you should see that it stops at this debugger. Okay, so now if you see, it has stopped in this piece of code. And now if we try to go inside it, we can basically see how the engine is implemented, right? So we have gone inside it, but right now it will start to look like very complicated. So let's say, this is just like normal debugging at this point, right? You can see that it again goes to some evaluate script and it goes on like this, right? But I can also give you an overview of how this is working. So our engine would typically have like at least two things. One part is it has to have a parser. A parser is, basically something that takes your piece of code and converts it into like a object kind of a structure. So you can think like very roughly, it's like JSON.parse, where you give it some string as input and it gives you some kind of an intuitive object as output, right? So it has to use a parser, and then it has to, interpret those parts, right? So for example, like how does a parser output look? So there is this website called astexplorer.net. Okay, so you can go and like put any JavaScript code here and choose which parser you want to use. There are like multiple parsers. The one that Engine262 uses is called Acorn. This is also like a very like popular parser, so you can choose this, and then it shows you like what what this piece of code looks like to the parser, right? Or what does the parser return basically. So in this case, you can see that it says that my whole thing is an update expression. My operator is plus plus. Yeah, makes sense. Prefix false, meaning okay, this is a postfix plus plus, so I don't have like plus plus a. Instead, I have a plus plus, and my argument is just a identifier, like a variable whose name is a, right? So when your engine is going to run it, it's first going to pass it through this parser, and then looking at this object, right? You can see this whole thing is kind of like an object, and then it will try to evaluate it. It will try to do something with it, right? So that is also what this engine is doing, Engine262. Now we want to go to that part of the code, right? You can see there is a lot of setup code, there is a lot of things, a lot of functions it forwards to, right? So it's, if you start debugging, even from the actual start, it might get like very messy, right? So the other option would be, what about we find that part where it implements this a plus plus thing, right? It implements how it works, and then go to that file directly, put a breakpoint there and see. Okay, so what can be a way of finding where it is implemented? So one way is, you see this is a plus plus, and this is called as a update expression, right? So like surely somewhere in the code in Engine262 it is going to handle a update expression, right? So what I can do is I can go to this code base, do like a command shift F, like a global search, and I can just search for that, right? Update expression. It's again gets very complicated, but looks like this is the file, update expression.mjs. And again, if we go in here, so let's see. So you can see, right, this is basically how the engine has implemented what should happen when you do any of these things, whether you do a plus plus or you do plus plus a, or even you do like the decrement operator. Okay, so we can basically, what we can do is we can basically put a breakpoint here, or maybe like here, and see what is the case here, right? See what is happening. So I'll go to my file. Actually, we are already in the debugger, so let's continue with that. See, so right now we have like stopped at this part, right? And we can see what are the inputs to this thing. You can see operator is plus plus, it says prefix false, and my argument is something pretty complicated. And but like how do we make it simple, right? Because what you're looking at is the variable a here. We're trying to do a plus plus, so my argument is a, but how do we know that easily? So there is a sort of not exactly global, but there is a helper function within Engine262 which is called inspect. And if you do inspect of anything, so if I do inspect of argument, okay, so it doesn't work here. But let's say if you did it for something else, oftentimes it will give you like a helpful output. Like if you are looking at something like 3 or a number 3 that you have written in your code, within this engine, this might it might look at like something like a number value, right? It might wrap it in some kind of object and show you, which is hard to understand. But if you do inspect of something, it gives you the equivalent of console.log, so it will give you like a string output. Okay, so anyway, let's see how a plus plus works here. Okay, so we go in here, and this is the case that satisfies, which is fine. No, I have a plus plus and it's postfix, so it's not prefix, so it goes in here, right? The first thing it will do is it will evaluate my left hand side. Again, my left hand side is just a, so this is how it looks, right? If you write a plus plus, it considers your a to be the left hand side expression, and plus plus to be just the operator. So what is happening internally is it will evaluate the left hand side. So for example, maybe I can try it out here. So maybe if we had this, so in your Node.js, if you had like maybe if you had like a equal to 1, and you put this thing in a bracket, so it becomes an expression, and still you do plus plus, or maybe plus just prefix just to show you, this would still work, right? But as you can understand, the left hand side expression in this case, it's not just a variable. In this case, it becomes an expression. So that's why it's saying that my left hand side can be an expression. It doesn't allow everything, like You can't really do like 5 plus plus. That's just a error. The left hand side effectively has to be like a variable name, or it can be like a property. So you could do like, you could do like, I have a object, and may say my a dot b is 1, and then I can do plus plus a dot b. So this thing that you are trying to do plus plus on, that has to be either a variable name or a property name. And again, this would work if you see a dot b, it's also set to value 2. Okay.
Hey, are you able to hear Abhash? Are you able to hear me? Am I audible? Yes. Okay, cool. So looks like some disconnection from Abhash. So he must be getting back in some time. JavaScript crashed while debugging.
आपने ये व्यक्ति के
Yeah, he must be back in some time. But in the meantime, if we have any questions on our, looks like Kareem is a favorite topic. So on functional programming, we can ask those. So I can pull our previous speaker Param in and he can try to talk. Anybody can raise their hand also. So this is a Ankush has a very good question. Why Node.js developer needs helmet? Ankush, I think you will only can come on stage and answer. Okay, so Param is on our air mid stage. So if anything on functional programming, we he can answer in the meantime.
Sure, Petro. Thanks for doing this. Let me go over the chat and see the
Yeah,
questions.
sure. Yeah.
We missed from. Okay, I can't see. Okay.
So again, I'll come back to the same question, which is very interesting. How much functional programming is good, right? Anybody else like to answer that? Who has used functional programming in their day-to-day programming? Anyone? If they raise their hand, I can pull them into the stage. They can talk about their experience on that also. Yeah. So in the meantime, you can. Gaurav, we can go to your questions. So there is one question: how does Lambda compare with Rxjs?
Yeah, that's a very nice question actually. So Rxjs, I would say I've used Rxjs in Angular, and because it comes with Rxjs built into it, and using functional programming with reactive programming is like the ultimate beneficial thing to do. But yes, Rxjs is not a panacea for everything. So Rxjs is also another library that supports functional programming patterns and paradigms. And they Lambda and Rxjs, they have complete two kind of audiences based on their usage. Rxjs is for reactive programming, and Lambda doesn't have to do anything with reactiveness. But yes, the core concepts of like mapping, tapping, filtering, all those things are shared between Lambda and Rxjs. So yeah, those are the similarities and differences between them. The next one would be, can we pass the style between the low dash? Wonderful session. Was it screen? Can there be any disadvantage in terms of performance and code execution? So the only thing that comes into mind is when we use multiple steps of map, filter, and reduce. At every point of time, we are creating the in between memories in between because we aren't mutating anything at all. So we are creating new objects every time. Yes, that is true. But there are resolutions to those kind of problems. There is something called as transduction. So if you check my Medium, I have written an article on that as well, and that fulfills one of those problems. Yeah. Can you please tell how does? Oh, I think we covered that. Consider we having. I think more questions were on the chat, so I'll move to the chat now. Please suggest me if I'm not missing anything. Could not understand lens. What problem does it solve? Compose function double-edged sword. I feel difficult to debug. Okay, so the problem that lens solve is so lens doesn't solve any problem on its own, but lens is a thing that needs to be used with other utilities like setting and over and view. And for those purpose, we need lens. So the main use case you would say for a lens in whole is to focus on a one part of a given thing, be it a very large object or a large array, and you want to focus on one given property of that nested object. So you can take that, you can pull that off. So the very nice use case I found recently is so you have create React app and you try to use rescripts or maybe React overrides, and that's when you want to go to, let's say, config.resolve.alias number fourth index. I want to change this alias to this one. So you can apply a lens at that by specifying the path first using lens path, and then you can use either r.set or r.over to change it. So that's a very, so it's all about chunking the code that I would say. So if you see these Lambda function in isolation, they would seem like they don't give you any benefit. But once you use them in the whole ecosystem, that's when they start making more sense. Compose functions are double-edged sword. I feel difficult to debug. Yes, they can seem, but I believe if you are doing the chunking correctly, it can't feel difficult to debug. And also considering the fact that you at any point if some error is happening, it would be present inside that scoped function. So if you're doing the segregation of concerns really well, you would know it'll automatically reduce the surface area of debugging. So you can directly go to that function and change the functionality that's causing the error. We agreed we need to maintain balance. Would like to get Param's take on it. How much composition function is too much? Okay, that's
what I was coming to.
Yeah.
So I think there is one question I'm not sure if you answered: the main difference between a pure function and impure function.
We covered that in our yeah, in the first part. So pure function gives this exact same output, guaranteed output given given input, and impure function you can't guarantee, you can't feel confident about whether it will give the same output. Doesn't matter how many times you call it, so it might eventually give a wrong output. Someone mentioned that having a network call, if it gives the same output, can that be considered as pure? So I say it can't be guaranteed at all. Network depends on your internet, your machine, it the server itself, the server could give 500 at any point of time, so it can't be guaranteed at all. Then sometimes using too much of functional style feels like a friction as a beginner or looking to exactly, definitely. I've gone through the same. I would have started doing functional programming 6 years back when my senior colleague told me about it, but I was like, oh damn it, like it's too much for me. I don't want to learn another new thing. And when I saw it, eventually, people see it, and they say, okay, again, it comes through on PR discussions. In my last company, there were some people who were really, really against functional programming because of this. They because they don't understand the fact, and I empathize with that why do you want to use r dot equals r dot if else in place of ternary operators and equal operators. So I see the point there, but again, I would say you won't be able to see the benefits unless you use it fully, or you take a project. So I've been using functional programming for a year now, and in the beginning it has been very full of friction to me. I completely understand that, but it's only when you start using it and you start seeing the patterns that's when you find the real love towards it. So I've used it in one of my freelance projects, and I absolutely loved it. The main friction is having people on board on this idea, and your team, because it involves some of a learning curve. So I suggest don't try to mutate your current current team codes. But if you are able to, please bring it on the table, and there are clear visible benefits of it. But you have to bring everyone on the table. But if you aren't able to, just use it in your personal projects and you start seeing the value out of it. Yeah. And please shoot some more questions. I hope I'm not missing anything. You can tell the network and request now. Idempotent request. Okay, there's a thing called as idempotent request. Yeah, is it like a mock thing that can be made once several times with the sort effect? Okay, I don't have much context on it, but yes, if something is idempotent, that means I believe it's more in the context of mocking the API, and which will definitely obviously give the right result. Yeah. What's reactive programming in short? Reactive programming is about the way, it's all about streams. So it's not about for example, the events that we see on our web applications, right? We press a click button and that's it. But in reactive programming, you try to listen to a stream of events, basically, which means that the click event can come over time, and we are listening to that stream of event. We can buffer those streams. We can operate on that streams, and we can perform a lot of cool. There are very separate use cases for reactive programming. So yeah, that's a use of it. Angular uses it for watching the route parameters and watching these AJAX events as well, network events a lot. So Netflix is a very good example of a very good use case for reactive programming. Yeah. What's a use case or application? Use cases wherein you want to, suppose you have to build a YouTube streaming service, right? On YouTube, you have this thing of live events like we are doing right now. So anyone can join this thing at any moment. So adding the person to the live video stream and removing it, all these things are built into reactive programming. It's all about how buffering works, how you can change the speed of the playback, how you can we use that debounce and throttle all the time, right? So these are very two prominent operators of reactive programming. So yeah, it has really nice, cool use cases. There was a nice book I would share if I find the link on it. Mm-hmm. Idempotency in REST means no side effect after the first call to the endpoint. Yeah. The same endpoint, when called multiple times, should provide the same response, given nothing else changes the response. Okay. So but still we have this concept of first call. The first call could also fail, right? Network can't be trusted, So whenever there's something outside the JavaScript realm, we have to understand that network calls are happening due to the virtue of browser APIs. So the browser network thread is doing that. So that's outside the realm of JavaScript. So even though it gives, it seems like a cached network request to me, and the first time is still there, and that will still cause, having a console log statement inside a function still makes that function impure. So yeah. And we achieve this reactive thing in React.js as well, of course. I mean, so you just need to import the Rxjs library, and probably you have been using reactive programming all along if you're using debounce and throttle from Lodash. So that's a very nice example of how streams are implemented in JavaScript. Yeah.
So on reactive programming, if I want to say in short, I think Aksharan has asked. So
Mhm.
Excel sheet, right? We write two columns, some number, and the third column we do A plus B, A cross
Yeah.
B. That's reactive, right? Anytime you change your column A, your column C get changed automatically because column C has a formula of adding or multiplying your column A and B. So that's a reactive programming in short, if I have to say. And
Mhm.
anywhere if you see these kind of thing, that's a reactive programming. And reactive programming is not just there in JavaScript; it's there in all
Yeah.
the.
So we have Rxjs, we have RxJava, Rx
Yeah.
Python, Rx Swift. So all these are implementations. So reactive programming is just a paradigm, just like functional programming. And when you combine functional programming with reactive programming, it becomes FRP, called as functional reactive programming. So which is what Rxjs has in it, built in it, the concept of it. All the things which are not in the scope of JavaScript will be considered as impure, right? Uh, Not in the scope of JavaScript. I mean, not in the JavaScript engine APIs. Yeah, you can say that. So, yeah, because they would give different outputs in different ways. So, okay, Abbas
Oh,
is here.
finally able to join.
Cool, cool,
Yeah, Vash, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Let's take
Is my
Abbas.
screen share working?
Not yet. Yeah, it's coming up.
Okay, okay, great. Uh, so okay, cool.
Yeah.
So where did you actually like? Where was I when you stopped?
Okay. So anybody has a context? Because after that we discussed a lot. So where Abhas has stopped.
Okay, so so
I
so
yeah, left section, that's what Abhishek is saying.
okay, left expression. Got it. Okay.
Oh,
Uh,
awesome. Hey, Parminder, I'm just uh, taking you out of stage. So
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Mhm.
okay, cool. Yeah. So over to you, Avash. You can go ahead.
yeah, sure. So basically, you can start once more, I guess. So yeah, let's start. Okay, so I think what I was trying to say is that yeah. So basically, when you come at this point, right? This is how. Did I write it? Okay. So this is how your code looks, right? Say you have your a plus plus, so this is your like left hand side expression, and then you have plus, right? And so if we go in here, what it is basically trying is it will try to see what is the old value, right? Here it's 3, and then it will try to increment that to get the new value, so that will become 4. And what is a better way of saying what is the value? So recommend is, so you can go do like inspect and put like the new value or the old value, and see, in a way which is easier to understand, right? So ideally this will again like go through console.log, so you can see it like how you'd see in your in your Chrome debugger or something, right? And the point is, see, here we can see intuitively that this is 3 and this becomes 4, right? But if you're looking in the specification, the only way of knowing that would be that you have to go through all these nested functions, and then only you can see the value. But here I can just skip to the next line and see what is the value, right? So my new value is 4, and now what it's going to do is it's going to do put value. So it will basically set this value 4 to my LHS, right? So if as, let's say, it won't be a proper polyfill, but if I was doing something like this, so it's like my old value is my initial value of a, so that is 3. My new value becomes like 3 plus 1, so it becomes 4. And this thing is, if I go again, so we are going to do LHS equal to the new value. So what we're going to do is a equal to new value, which is 4, right? Now look at the last part. So it's fine if you do a plus plus, a actually gets incremented, which is fine. But look at the last line. It says return old value, right? So that means because this whole thing is an expression, right? So if I did like print or console.log of a plus plus, this thing actually returns the old value 3. So it's going to do like return of 3. So in my console, I'm actually going to see 3 instead of 4. Okay, so what I mean is, if I again run Node.js here and I say a equal to 3, and you might have noticed this thing actually indirectly. So if you do like maybe a plus plus, see, this thing that prints here, right? This is the return value of this expression, and this is still 3. Or maybe if I did like even console.log, that would also be this is 3, right? But if I look at the value of it has been like incremented to, right? So this is what I mean by some places where you're trying to set up this Engine262 and going through a JavaScript engine can be helpful in understanding, because you can actually go into these parts which you cannot do with your normal Chrome debugger. So if you write a plus plus in Chrome, you can't actually go into it and see what the engine is doing, right? But some simple engine like this, you can see exactly how everything is implemented. So sometimes when you want to understand like exactly how things are happening in JavaScript, there are sort of two ways, right? You can go to the specification text, which we are like showing earlier. So this is the URL. You can go here and like search for stuff and see, like it will be written in sort of English how things should work, right? But that can sometimes feel a bit complicated because you can't run it. So the other option is you can go set up a JavaScript engine like this. So like you saw, it's hardly like some 20 lines of setup code. You can basically copy paste that. You can put your own code which you want to run and see how it goes, and then you can put like breakpoint in the file and see how it is implemented, right? And I think that can help us sometimes in having a more like a better quality of discussion, right? Like when you see some LinkedIn post or some Twitter post say giving you some quiz, right? And then someone tries to explain it. What I've seen often is these explanations are not exactly correct, or at least very very ambiguous, right? They're there to explain the result that you are seeing, but in my mind they often don't like explain the other cases that are there, right? So what I'm trying to show you is that this is one more way where if you go and see how things are implemented internally, you can actually like explain things in a much better way, or you can say very easily when someone is wrong somewhere, right? So yeah, that is the biggest takeaway, that if something feels weird or the explanation feels very complicated, or it doesn't feel right, you can actually go in here and see it. That's also option that you have, and it's not super complicated. Like if you've seen here till now, we have only been in JavaScript, right? Like we have not gone into any some like C++ or something, right? And some of these things you can understand, some of these things you can skip over and just like debug, like you debug your own code. So yeah, I mean, if like that was the basic thing I wanted to talk about, that that this is an option. This can sometimes helps in like better discussion. And I wanted to show like the overall debugging flow, how you can do it, some kind of an example. So yeah, if someone wants, you can go through some specific code or some example, but that was the general intention. So yeah, if someone would like to like see how a specific thing works, maybe you can go through that, or maybe we can like open up for questions. Hey Patri there.
Hey, I'm here. So guys, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand. You can chat, put on question tab, anything on Engine 262. Okay. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
can you tell about recursive function?
Okay. Yeah. Can you tell about recursive function? Okay. Uh, mm, yeah. I mean, we can look into that, but it will be basically one like a function calling itself. Uh, so yeah. I mean, if you want, I can show like how a function call would look like here, right? So if you go to like the specification, there would be like something like this. See, again, you can go to the code also and see. But it says like there is some. This is sort of a what you can call as abstract method, right? You can't really write this thing in JavaScript, but it is like defined there in the specification. So this is an abstract method called call, and you can sort of understand, but maybe not. So it's like you get these few inputs. So you get the function as the input. Maybe this will be like the what is this value of the function call, and then you get like a list of arguments, right? And effectively what it will do is so every function has sort of this again internal method, you could say, like dot call, right? And it will do dot call with those values, and then that function, like depending on your type of function, it can decide what to do with it. So let's say if you want to see like maybe how this thing is implemented, you can search for call, and one thing you'll notice is that there are like various types of call. So it's like if you have a function declaration, that has a different type of call. If you have a function maybe like an arrow expression, that works slightly differently. So that's why you have like multiple implementations of it, and it can again work like differently if you have a bound function. So if you do like dot bind, that would work differently. So yeah, I mean, maybe we should not go into everything, but let's say this is how a call will look for like a normal function. uh, if we can look overall, uh, let me just try to understand this. Okay, so I think in general what it will do is, right, it will create like a new execution context for the new function that you are calling, right? It will add this value in that execution context. Then it will effectively evaluate the body of your function, right? So you have like multiple statements in there, and whatever is the result of running all the statements, right? So let's say if we look at this, so it's like if you use a return statement, so if you do return 1 to 3, then the function itself returns that value, right? So if you have some statement saying return 1 to 3, then your function will basically forward that value to the next thing. But if you don't have a return statement, like your last line is just console.log2 or something like that, then your function actually doesn't return anything, so it basically just returns undefined. So yeah, I mean, roughly this is how functions work, but of course there is like a lot more to it, like how this value works and all of that. So yeah. Can you debug some 30 lines of code of JavaScript using this Engine262? Okay. Uh, so yeah, I mean, the thing is that you cannot. So I wouldn't say it as like normal debugging, right? So normal debugging means like you put like you have some JavaScript in your application and you can put a breakpoint in Chrome and debug it. So you can't really do that here, right? This is mostly for debugging some like small lines of code like this. So for example, just like here, right? So out plus plus, so you have this, whatever you put within this evaluate script, that is basically the line of JavaScript you are running, right? So in this case, first line we run is a equal to 3. Second line within the same global environment, you could say, the second line we are a plus plus, right? And again, if we stop the debugger, and I just set it up here, but yeah, it will stop here. Like this is in Node.js, right? But if I go inside this, if you go inside this, this is all sort of Engine262 code, right? Like the JavaScript engine code base. So there you can see what it is doing. So it takes your string as an input and then does multiple things. Again, if you remember, so this is where it talks about what happens when you do like plus plus of something. So yeah, so that was the rough idea. That it evaluates the left hand side. So if you have a plus plus and a value is 1, it gets the old value which is 1. It figures out what is the new value. So this will be basically old value plus 1. So if you see here, it does like type numeric dot unit. Now why it's like not like just 1 is because like you have different types of number. Like you can have a big int or a number in JavaScript. So it figures out whether to do like a big int add or a JavaScript like number add, and then it sets the new value to the variable. So if your a is 1, it now becomes 2, but it returns the old value, right? So if you like use that value somewhere, that will be the old value 1. So yeah, so you can basically put debug breakpoints here and see what it returns. So that's it mostly. How can I display table records into nested objects when self-join the table? I'm not sure what is the question here.
Okay, so with this, anyone has any more questions? Cool. I think done this and our
Okay.
is meetup 52 also. So again, a couple of minutes. If anybody has any questions, they can ask, or we'll be closing in 2 minutes. And thank you all for joining the session. I know sometime joining on Saturday morning after full 5 days of your normal working is tough, but I really appreciate all those who taken the time out, join on Saturday morning to learn something. So these videos will be posted on our YouTube channel also. So if you want to see it again, you can do that as well. And our YouTube channel has all previous meetup video also, so you can view those also. So you can join our Discord channel. So if you have any questions, so Abhas is there already. He's one of our experts on Discord channel. So you can ask your questions over there also. So we have our experts. They will definitely try to answer those. And Avash has made a video on also on the same topic. What he just posted on the chat. You can go through that as well. So yeah, that's all from us for from JavaScript Meetup. So we'll be seeing you on 2021. So have a wonderful vacation time now. Have a good day. Have a good vacation and happy new year in advance. Bye bye.